Brock Lesnar's drug test cover-up at UFC 200. Picture this, UFC 200 in July 2016, the biggest fight card yet. 18,202 fans packed into T-Mobile Arena, a $10.7 million gate, and over 1 million PPV buys. At the center, Brock Lesnar, wrestling legend returning to MMA after 4.5 years, earning a record $2.5 million purse. But behind the scenes was a scandal that would shake the sport. The U.S. anti-doping agency, USADA, informed UFC they had a second failed drug test for Lesnar, one before the fight and one on fight night. Both flagged clomiphene and its metabolite 4-hydroxyclomiphene, banned hormone modulators used to mask steroid use. That means Lesnar stepped into the octagon already flagged for cheating, and still got to fight, win, and take home millions. The UFC's official story was that the results came too late. But that explanation fuels the conspiracy. Did the UFC delay or bury the test results to preserve PPV sales and protect the event? Lesnar's fight went on, and Mark Hunt, who lost by decision, later filed a lawsuit alleging fraud, conspiracy, and even racketeering, claiming the UFC knowingly allowed a doped opponent into the cage. In court, the lawsuit survived initial defenses, and survived until an appellate panel last year ruled Hunt failed to present enough evidence linking his injuries or financial damage directly to the UFC's conduct. Meanwhile, Lesnar was fined $250,000 and suspended for 1 year, with his win overturned to a no contest. But the conspiracy lingers. Was the timing of his test results and the lack of immediate action a deliberate choice to protect a star event? Investigators, fans, and fighters still debate whether UFC 200's spectacle was built on a hidden lie. Khabib versus Tony, the fight that was never meant to happen. Imagine waiting and waiting for your birthday party, only to have the cake blown out every single time. That's what happened with Khabib Nurmagomedov versus Tony Ferguson, a matchup booked 5 different times between 2015 and 2020, and each time canceled. It became known among fans as the MMA Bermuda Triangle, the place where fights vanish. Their first attempt was in December 2015 for a TUF finale, but Khabib pulled out with a rib injury. Then, in 2016, for a UFC on Fox event, Tony hurt his knee. He literally tripped over cables, and the bout was scrapped. At UFC 209 in early 2017, Khabib was hospitalized due to a botched weight cut on fight day. Then UFC 223 in April 2018. Tony tore a knee ligament while walking across the arena set and again pulled out. Each cancellation had a real reason. But getting canceled 5 times? Something about that just doesn't feel natural. Fans started whispering, was it just bad luck? Or was something behind the scenes boiling? Tony dropped hints, accusing Khabib's team of pulling the plug mentally, like foreseeing Tony was sharp in sparring and making phone calls to Khabib not to show up. That snippet went viral, and half the MMA world wondered if the cancellations were orchestrated. That night, when we were practicing, I met the Russian champ. The only person who wasn't smiling was the trainer. I saw the same trainer, made a phone call, says, dude, this kid is fucking sharp right now. The 5th time, UFC 249 in 2020, was undone by the COVID-19 pandemic. Irony or perfect cover, each time fans felt like they were getting closer, yet reality kept pulling away. Was this just the cruel fate of fight scheduling? Or did someone benefit more from the fight not happening? A dream fight destroyed again and again, and fans are still haunted by what could have been. Jon Jones and the pulsing steroid mystery. Okay, picture this. A fighter races across the octagon. He's Olympic-level talented, feared, instantly legendary. Then, despite multiple drug test fails, he's still allowed to fight. That's the strange saga with Jon Bones Jones and the controversial pulsing steroid theory that USADA and the UFC both stood behind. In 2017, Jones tested positive for turinabol, an anabolic steroid. That fight was overturned, and he was slapped with a 15-month suspension, retroactive after arbitration, before regaining his title and returning to the spotlight. Fast forward to December 2018. Jones is cleared to fight again, but a few days before UFC 232, a new drug test detected trace amounts of turinabol's M3 metabolite in his system, a minuscule amount, measured in picograms. That's 1/trillionth of a gram. Still, it flagged USADA and the California State Athletic Commission. Instead of postponing or banning Jones again, experts stepped in with a theory. They said the metabolite might be pulsing, meaning remnants from his earlier steroid use could be redistributing during stress like like weight cut or intense exercise. In short, it wasn't fresh doping. It was a leftover echo of an old violation. That explanation marked a departure from how other fighters were treated. No one else gets that benefit of the doubt when banned substances pop up. Even on fan forums and Reddit, people questioned it. The pulsing theory is plausible, but so is re-ingestion. Why does Jon get special treatment? Jeff Nowitzki, UFC's VP of Athlete Health and Performance, backed the theory, calling it scientifically reasonable and reassuring everyone Jones had not doped again. So, what's the conspiracy angle? Many believe that Jon Jones, arguably the biggest star in MMA history, wouldn't be allowed to fight without approval from the top. Was the pulsing theory science saving the reputation of a cash cow? Or an honest call under pressure? Fans, fighters, and experts still argue. Was this a legitimate breakthrough or a bending of the rules for one of the sport's biggest legends? Anderson Silva's vanishing steroid tests. Okay, imagine you're waiting to see a legendary fight. Someone you've looked up to for years. Instead of celebrating his return, you're told he tested positive for steroids. That's what happened with Anderson Silva at UFC 183 in January 2015. Silva had been out of action for over a year, recovering from a broken leg. When he came back to beat Nick Diaz by unanimous decision, fans roared. But behind the scenes, the Nevada State Athletic Commission, NSAC, received results from a drug test taken on January 9th, and Silva tested positive for drostanolone, an anabolic steroid, and androsterone, another banned substance. Yet, nobody stopped the fight because the results didn't arrive until after the match. Then, during fight week, another test on January 31st also flagged drostanolone and a pair of anti-anxiety meds, temazepam and oxazepam, which were banned without a therapeutic exemption. Silva claimed he unknowingly took a contaminated sexual enhancer from a friend after a trip to Thailand, but his defense lacked documentation. No proof, no receipts, nothing to back it up. The NSAC didn't let him walk away unscathed. They retroactively suspended him for 1 year, fined him $380,000, his full win bonus plus 30% of his show money, and changed the result to a no contest. Here's where it gets murky, and why a conspiracy lives on. How do two damning drug test results vanish in space and time? Why was Silva allowed to fight after the first positive? Critics wonder if the UFC made sure he'd still headline. After all, he was the biggest star in the sport. Silva's reputation took a big hit, yet UFC maintained that NSAC simply didn't have results in time, not that the organization helped bury them. Still, fans talk in hushed tones. Was UFC protecting their cash cow, or was it just sloppy testing? The story never died. It just went silent. The McGregor Privilege. Why he never gets punished. Imagine you're the most famous fighter in the world, a pay-per-view goldmine. And no matter how bad the scandal, you're always handed a lifeline. That's the McGregor Privilege in a nutshell. Conor McGregor keeps skating through high-profile messes untouched. Let's start with the bus attack during UFC 223 Media Day in 2018. McGregor, furious about his teammate being slapped by Khabib's camp, trashed a bus at close range with a dolly. Glass flew inside. Fighters like Michael Chiesa and Ray Borg got hurt. Yet McGregor didn't go to jail. He performed 5 days of community service, got anger management counseling, and paid bail, then moved on. Yawak, you ask? That's the norm for him. He's also been accused and found liable for sexual assault in an Irish civil court. He was ordered to pay over 248,000 euros in damages. Rumor had it this would push his UFC career to the brink. But instead, rivals like Michael Chandler publicly said, "Why not just get back in the cage?" The UFC held firm too. Dana White merely said he had nothing further to add. Despite the verdict, McGregor keeps being touted for a return, just pushed back. His brand partnerships took a hit, yes, but ESPN coverage remained muted. And fans still talk about when he comes back, not if. As of late 2025, McGregor even launched a presidential run in Ireland, calling on people to help put him on the ballot, while firmly denying the assault. That's some next-level pivot. So what's going on? Fans call it a privilege fueled by star power and profits. He crashes a bus, commits assault, faces serious allegations, and yet he keeps a lane back to the octagon. That kind of treatment? It doesn't happen to just anyone. Dana White's hand-picked judges and referee bias. Imagine you're watching a treasure hunt, and one person seems to always know where the treasure is buried. even if nobody else does. That's what whispers about judge and referee bias in the UFC sound like. People wonder if Dana White secretly influences who gets picked to make calls. So outcomes sometimes fit his story. Time after time, fans, fighters, and even Dana himself have called out blown decisions. At UFC 307, he didn't hold back, saying the judging looked like a boxing match in Ireland, and how atrocious officiating made the event. He was furious, calling out mistakes and calling for better oversight. Or take UFC 302, where Judge Dave Torelli scored a fight 49-46 for Paulo Costa, when everyone else saw Sean Strickland winning. Dana White called that score not just wrong, but insane, suggesting that Judge should be sent back to minor league events. Even fighters get angry. Bantamweight Garrett Armfield publicly tagged Dana White and urged him to investigate these judges after losing a fight that many thought he clearly won. Dig deeper into online forums, and fans talk about how White appears to operate behind the scenes. Some accuse him of ghosting fighters who win cleanly, or fans of manipulating judging and fight choices, while still acting like he has no control over who actually picks the refs. Of course, the UFC says commissions, not Dana, pick the judges. But when White complains on camera, and then things change, people start to wonder, is bad judging just incompetence, or a tool used to nudge fights toward drama and cash? At its core, the conspiracy centers on power. The UFC's success depends on storytelling. If judges or refs flip a fight just right, suddenly the underdog becomes a hero, or the villain comes back. And when the boss calls something atrocious after it happens, it leaves a lasting suspicion. Fighter pay suppression, and antitrust showdown. Imagine building castles for someone who never gives you bricks. That's how many UFC fighters feel. They create epic fights, grow the sport, but end up with scraps of the cash. The conspiracy here, UFC, like the sheriffs of Fightland, has kept fighters from making real money by blocking other leagues and locking athletes into exclusive deals. That's what antitrust lawsuits claim the organization has done for years. In 2014, legends like Kung Le, Nate Quarry, and John Fitch filed the first lawsuit accusing the UFC, then Zuffa, of using its monopoly to suppress pay and eliminate competition. They argued that fighters were trapped, unable to negotiate or take better deals elsewhere. Here's the real shocker. From 2007 to 2017, UFC fighters earned only 19.6% of total revenue, while NFL, NBA, and MLB players take home almost half. That disparity isn't just math, it's a profit-hoarding plan. By 2025, a court-approved settlement of $375 million finally offered a measure of justice. Over 1,000 fighters from that 2010 to 2017 era got paid, averaging around $250,000 each. Though some legends, like Anderson Silva, scored over $10 million. That's impressive, but thin dinner for those who built the feast. The systemic issue: UFC fighters are labeled independent contractors, not employees. That means no healthcare, pensions, or bargaining power. They're paid per fight, with no long-term security. As Demetrius Johnson lamented, even as UFC's flyweight GOAT, he wasn't allowed pay-per-view points. His total lifetime earnings? Around $1.7 million, while stars like Conor McGregor make that in one fight. A wave of new lawsuits, like the Johnson vs. Zuffa case, are pushing for deeper reforms beyond just settlements. And in 2025, with a massive $7.7 billion TV deal, cash is pouring in. The big question: will fighters finally see a bigger slice? Or will the UFC still guard the vault? The Fertitta brothers' mafia ties, and UFC's shadowy origins. Let's go way back to a sunny town on the Texas coast called Galveston in the mid-1900s. That's where the Fertitta family built their legacy, closely tied to both casinos and rumors of organized crime. Their roots trace to the powerful Maceo crime family, which ruled Galveston's underworld through bootleg booze and upscale casinos. In fact, Frank Fertitta Jr.'s mother married into the Maceo family, giving the Fertittas a direct connection to that shadowy empire. The Maceos ran gambling with political protection and a strange mix of terror and and community donations. Fast forward, Frank Jr. used that foundation to build massive success in Las Vegas, owning casinos like Station Casinos. His sons, Frank Fertitta III and Lorenzo Fertitta, inherited not just wealth, but the ability to navigate Las Vegas's gritty, power-laden networks. By 2001, the UFC was on life support. The men who bought it, Frank III and Lorenzo, did so for a mere $2 million, injecting new life into the struggling sport. They formed Zuffa LLC, installed Dana White as president, and slowly turned UFC into a billion-dollar machine. But here's where the whispers began. Critics wonder if the Fertittas used the same kind of influence and political maneuvering they inherited from their forebears to secure licensing, push state commissions, and shut out rivals. The kind of behind-the-scenes power once wielded by old-school mob families. Fans on forums even call it mob lineage, and one user said it flat out. The Fertittas inherited their boss moves from criminals of Galveston. It's not a proven crime, but when you connect the dots, from mob-style dominance in Galveston to casino wealth to flipping a dying fight promotion into a global juggernaut, it feels like a family business with a few skeletons in the closet. If you love diving into UFC's wildest conspiracies, don't stop here. Hit that like button, smash subscribe, and check out more crazy fight stories waiting for you on this channel.